And greetings, happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Todd Erzen has the day off. With Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. Coming up on today's show at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be rejoined by an old and good friend of the program. Dr. Scott Atlas is going to be with us. We're going to get his thoughts on what he sees coming now from Trump's really landmark public health appointees and what suggestions he would have for them. That's coming up at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, Aaron has cooked up something for Theology Thursday where we're going to take a bit of a detour from our ongoing study on the book of Romans. Maybe good to do that without Todd here anyway. And we're going to discuss a cultural phenomenon right now and how it is being presented to the American people, and what are some of the pathologies, not just theologies, but when theology goes wrong, when worldview goes wrong, pathology, it becomes. We're going to discuss what some of the worldview theological messages being conveyed through which you're about to see next hour. What is it that they're trying to influence. There you go. Influence the culture with. Also want to welcome a brand new partner to the program as well. I'm anxious to see this film. I've been offered screeners. I have politely refused them because I want to see it for the first time here on the big screen. And it's the latest from our friends over at Angel Studios. It's called King of Kings. A father tells his son the greatest story ever told. And what begins as a bedtime story evolves into a life-changing journey through vivid imagination. The boy walks alongside Christ, witnessing miracles, facing his trials, understanding his ultimate sacrifice. It's the opportunity to endure, to rediscover the enduring power of hope, love, and redemption through eyes of a child. And this has a very high-profile cast as well. From Oscar Isaac, who's going to play Christ. So he played his dad, his earthly dad, in the Nativity Story, which is a great movie, by the way. Now he's going to play Christ as well. Oscar Isaac, Pierce Brosnan, Mark Hamill, Kenneth Branagh, Ben Kingsley, Uma Thurman, Forrest Whitaker. Folks, there's a lot of Oscar nominations and awards in that cast. And that is the voice cast for the latest from Angel Studio, The King of Kings. All right, so get your tickets now. Get your tickets now so you can enjoy it for Easter at angel.com/Steve. That's angel.com/Steve. All right, let's kick it off with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Liberation Day, which came, went, and the sun rose again this morning.
In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them. Very simple. Can't get any simpler than that. This is one of the most important days, in my opinion, in American history. It's our declaration of economic independence. For years, hardworking American citizens were forced to sit on the sidelines as other nations got rich and powerful, much of it at our expense.
President Trump signed executive orders formally enacting reciprocal tariffs on pretty much every nation the United States does trade with.
In the coming days, there will be complaints from the globalists and the outsourcers and special interests and the fake news. Always, the fake news will always complain. But never forget, every prediction our opponents made about trade for the last 30 years has been proven totally wrong. They were wrong about NAFTA. They were wrong about China. They were wrong about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been a disaster if I didn't terminate it. If I didn't terminate that, United Auto Workers, you would have had no jobs in this country.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he's sure this new policy, in the long run, will put the United States on a better economic footing.
You look back in 1998, you look back in 2007, right before it looked great, everything collapsed. So, I mean, it looked great right before everything collapsed. So we have taken us off that trajectory, and we are putting ourselves back onto a sound trajectory.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, surprise, surprise, hates it.
This is not Liberation Day, it's Recession Day in the United States of America. That's what the Trump tariffs are going to do. Crash the economy.
In other news, Anthony Fauci's wife has been caught up in the mass layoffs at HHS. Christine Grady had been working at NIH for many years. Tragedy in Texas as yesterday morning at a track meet at a Frisco high school. A young man named Austin Metcalf was stabbed to death and bled out in the arms of his twin brother. 17-year-old Carmelo Anthony was arrested for murder. The boy's father spoke to local media.
The sad part about it is he died in his brother's arms. They were twins, identical twins. And his brother was holding on to him, trying to make it stop bleeding. And he died in his brother's arms. And I rushed up there, and I saw him on the gurney. And I could tell. They said he wasn't breathing. And I could see all the blood. And I saw where the wound was. I'm not trying to judge, but what kind of parents did this child have? What was he taught? He brought a knife to a track meet, and he murdered my son by stabbing him in the heart. The guy was in the wrong place. They asked him to move, and he bowed up. This is murder. I don't know. I know they have someone in custody.
Yeah, they do.
And you know what? I already forgive this person. Already. God takes care of things. God's going to take care of me. God's going to take care of my family.
Meanwhile, here's what's going on at the Texas state capitol.
And where their service is unfaithful, we beg for your forgiveness. They know not what they do. God, forgive them for placing party over people. Forgive them for lining their pockets and campaigns with bribes from billionaires. For we pray especially for the most vulnerable people in our state, our children. Guide these lawmakers to protect all our Texas children, regardless of religion, race, socioeconomic status, gender identity.
And finally, a palate cleanser at Steve's request. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you continue to struggle against chronic pain, we may have the solution for you. There is no guarantee here. All right, it's not an antidote, but it's a quality supplement that over the years, 1 million people, or a little bit more than that, have tried, and about 70% of them saw such great results in 3 weeks or less, they stuck with the product long term. You know what? It costs you just $20 to see. If you don't see a difference in your pain in 3 weeks or less, what do you got to lose for just $20, except maybe finally that chronic pain from too much inflammation in your joints? Go to ReliefFactor.com and take on the 3-week Quick Start Challenge to see if you might be their latest success story. That's ReliefFactor.com. Again, ReliefFactor.com, or call them at 1-800-4 Relief, 800-4 Relief. Aaron, I want to spend the bulk of our time talking about the tariff issue from a couple of different angles. Number one, I'm a big believer. In politics, you are the hills you are willing to die on, right? And we have seen Donald Trump expend an inordinate amount of political capital on a wide range of issues, much to our adulation, of course. But it is very clear that this is a particular issue of conviction for him. I mean, there are clips, Aaron, going back to well before you were born, of Donald Trump saying the same things about trade policy and tariffs that he is saying right now. So it is very clear that he believes this is vital, as tax cuts were for Reagan a generation ago. Proving the argument that supply-side economics works. Tax cuts do spur economic growth. And Reagan fought on multiple fronts, but there were two in particular, similar to Trump, but there were two in particular that were his hills he was willing to die on. Ending the Soviet Union and supply-side economics. And it is very clear that this is a preeminent priority to Donald Trump, and that he views it as a necessity in order to reset the global marketplace, America's place in it, and the microeconomy for many Americans and the conversations that go on at their kitchen tables. So this is a gamble. I'll talk more about it in a minute. And on the internal end, just as on the external end, putting, as you heard me say to Glenn Beck earlier this morning when he was gracious enough to have me on his show, the judicial coup will not stop itself. It'll have to be stopped. And even if we got Congress to do the kinds of things we want them to do that they can do, Congress could, for example, absolutely pass and put it as a statute that federal courts can issue universal injunctions. They have the power to limit the jurisdiction of the federal courts. They could do that. But then I asked Glenn a question when that was presented as a remedy, and that question was, well, then what's to stop the other side from just marching into one of their federal courts and putting an injunction on that, saying you can't do that? What's to stop them from doing it? The answer is nothing. We are going to have to show the American people that the emperor has no clothes, that this is the boy who cried wolf, that they are not to bow down to these black robe tyrants. We're going to have to show this to the American people at some point. Otherwise, they're going to continue to externally attempt to stillborn this presidency every bit as fast as you can say Anthony Fauci stillborn the last Trump presidency. But that's an external threat or an external pressure point, an external inflection point. This is an internal one. Trump is making the calculus that he is going to gamble his entire presidency on this issue. Now, here's the thing. I'm willing to give this a shot, even though it goes against my pre-existent orthodoxies. Why? Because my pre-existent orthodoxies didn't turn out to be true in the world as we are living in it. Not as I thought it was. Like yesterday. It's my job to know these kinds of things. I'm actually just now finding out the extent by which our so-called allies are applying punitive tariffs to our goods. I had no idea Israel, a country again whose very existence, not current existence, actual existence, would not exist without the United States of America. Yes, I understand many of you have the view that God made it happen. Well, God made your life happen too. Okay? He is your creator, not your parents. But you wouldn't be here without your parents as the vessel by which his creation came to fruition. That's what I mean, just to clarify that. It was this country, regardless of your views of this iteration of Israel, it does not exist without the United States of America. It just doesn't. And it probably doesn't go on existing without us, frankly. So why in the world are they slapping tariffs on our goods? Why? Your buddy loaned you $50,000 to get out of debt. It was that or foreclosure of your house. Better yet, just gives it to you. Just gives it to you. Calls it foreign aid. Just gives it to you. And then he's like, hey man, my car's in the shop, you got a spare. Can I use, your extra car while mine's in the shop? And you like slap a tariff on it? There's lots of words we would call you, many of them not for polite consumption, yet all of those would be accurate descriptions of what you are. So it's very clear some of my understanding of how things were operating here that allowed me to have the orthodoxies I did are not real. Then there's the intellectuals we have on the right. I don't care what any of the intellectuals on the left think. Neither should you. I mean, you should care what the intellectuals on the left think. Like when we were growing up in the 80s, we cared what Tass and Pravda said. I mean, you should care what the intellectuals on the left think. Like the greatest generation cared, what was being reported on Japanese national radio in 42. You should just not. It's just not relevant to you. It's an upside down. It's a worldview you can't share a world with. It's completely contrary to any social compact or understanding of epistemological objective truth, and it should just be treated as such. So I mean really the intellectuals on my own side. Now, the same intellectuals on my own side who assured me that free markets work when we really don't have them. I mean, if I'm giving billions of dollars to Israel in foreign aid, and then they're giving me a tariff, Aaron, is that a free market?
No.
No, and that applies to any other country where we're doing that form of an exchange with, correct?
Correct.
Correct. So we're subsidizing you. In return, you give us nothing, but you tariff our products? No. That's not a free market, folks. And hey, those are the same intellectuals on my own side that called me a dope because I didn't want to take an unproven, untested, not a vaccine. Many of those same intellectuals on our side still refusing to see the truth of the toxic genetic serums, by the way. They also told me when I was growing up that NAFTA would build Mexico's middle class. Because as George W. Bush used to say, every human heart wants to be free. Which isn't biblical from the evangelical president. So, I mean, if we just have a North American free trade agreement, Mexico, because we all just happily share one common destiny of human nature being basically good, Mexico will use that free trade and the enrichment that they will get courtesy of the United States, and they'll use that to build their own middle class. And that will stop the flow of illegal aliens coming into the country. That's what we were told. Instead, not only did Mexico not build its middle class, it wounded our own. And we have more illegal aliens than ever before. And every attempt we made pre-Trump to try to stop the flow of illegal aliens, Republicans wouldn't let us do it because their corporate masters wanted the cheap labor. So we just had to keep putting up with the greatest Democrat voter drives over and over again. Since every country owes its entire or current existence to our own, and they were slapping tariffs on us, I'm willing to give the president they tried to shoot. I'm willing to give him a shot to prove his point. Let him shoot his shot here, so to speak, since they tried to shoot him. I mean, Trump literally risked his life for the country, which is way more than any of these intellectuals on our side have ever done, while getting very wealthy, mind you. That being said, it's a political gamble. Let's not be naive here. This is a major political gamble. And things will, just like Reagan gambled his presidency on tax cuts, and things got worse before they got better. Things that were already bad got worse before they got better. I'm just going to tell you right now, Hakeem Jeffries might actually end up being correct for a period of time. It might look for a while like April 2nd should have been April Fool's. Like it really was Recession Day, not Liberation Day. That may happen. If you're my age or older, you remember what happened the last time we had someone from the right attempt a major economic paradigm shift. Reagan did this, and that is exactly what happened. The 82 midterms were not good. But by 83, things began to turn around. By 84, things were humming, and, the rest, as they say, is history. But things got worse before they got better. As with most paradigm shifts, you ever tried to lose a bunch of weight? I have a couple times. Things get worse before they get better. Right? The withdrawal symptoms, the muscle atrophy that you are now awakening with working out and doing things you had neglected doing for so long, things get worse before they get better. When things are bad, they get worse before they get better. There's always Good Friday before Resurrection Sunday, every single time. So we may be sitting here in a few months, and that Hakeem Jeffries clip may seem to be prophetic. Don't be surprised if that happens. So this is a political gamble. Trump is going to need this to work. He's going to need this to kick in before next year's midterms. If not, we're going to lose 40 House seats. He'll be a lame duck day one, right after the election. I'm not going to, let's be adults here, Aaron, and recognize that is what is riding on this. Okay? And you only do this because you don't think your current deal was sustainable. I don't believe the current deal is sustainable for the long term. That doesn't mean this will be the right solution. But the amount of debt we're carrying, the amount of globalist subsidizing we're doing, not sustainable. So if Trump is wrong, if he's wrong about this, the consequences are going to be politically catastrophic. And we're going to feel them beyond the Trump era. In fact, we're going to have to, we'll be doing shows here. We just signed a 3-year extension. So we'll be doing shows towards the end of those 3 years, Aaron, in 28, talking about how MAGA is going to need to rebrand like the Tea Party when its brand went bad. That's what we're going to be doing. Mark my words. If he's wrong. However, and by the way, why uniquely this? Because when you mess with people's pocketbooks, they don't forget. That just uniquely pisses people off. However, Trump has also spent 40 years plus on having the same messaging on this issue. It is clearly something he has studied, he feels very strongly about. I remember his very first ever presidential event he did in Iowa in 2015. There was no talk of walls or immigration. He was still going to be months before he got onto that issue and that messaging. That entire debut Iowa caucus event he did was all about how Jeb Bush could not beat Hillary Clinton and trade. This was not sustainable. We've destroyed our manufacturing base, our textile base, our medicinal base, and our middle class is eroding. And it's just not a sustainable model for a superpower. This was his messaging, everything you're hearing right now. So he strongly believes in this. It's a hill he is willing to die on. Let's see if he's been right about it all along. Anybody have any other alternative experts, think tanks, systems that you think we ought to be turning to and you trust more? By all means, feel free to offer those up. And if he is right, if Trump is right about this, he has founded a political dynasty that will, moving forward, long outlive him. So this is a generational inflection point for the American right, Aaron, I believe, right here. What are your thoughts?
You know who else I think believes in this, just from maybe the inverse perspective? It would be China. China. That's who Donald Trump has talked about now ever since he was a political thing, particularly on the issue of trade. You've hypothesized this. I'm not sure if there's any way to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, but it certainly makes sense that we were starting to tariff when we were starting a trade war with China during the first Trump administration, and then bada bing, bada boom, just so happened to have a bat flew 500 miles, messed around with the wrong pangolin at a wet market, and wouldn't you know, there's COVID right there. That's the narrative anyway. So I think on some level, China,
interesting coincidence, even if it's not.
Yes, interesting nonetheless.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of where you are. I don't know for sure. I don't know if you can prove within a shadow of a doubt that his trade policy, his stated trade policy, and then the way that it's being carried out will for sure definitively turn the American middle class around, start building that back up again. But I do know that every single objection that I've seen, I have yet to hear a compelling argument against his stated trade policy that's not some form of a regurgitation of the last 40 years.
Of how we got here in
the first place.
I agree. Yeah.
And warnings that we're going to end up with this new trade policy in the same place that we were already going. So I just want to see this play out. Now, the White House has been touting a number, it's either $4 or $5 trillion already of confirmed investments into this country over the next several years. That's a great starting place. That's a great starting point. But I do know that something has got to give, and something is going to give one way or another. I don't want to say what do we got to lose, because we have a lot to lose. We're talking about people's pocketbooks here. We're talking about people's livelihoods. But we've got to find, this is maybe beyond anything in Trump's America First policy across the board. Foreign policy is good, but this is maybe the most novel and bold vision in terms of policy, really across the board, is what he's trying to do right now with trade. So we'll see how it plays out.
Here's our conundrum. Again, let's be adults. There's other shows you can go to, and they'll rub your belly and feed you grifty talking points that will give you your jollies. If you're listening to us, you came here for an adult conversation, so let's have one. We only have two options. substantial shrinking of government, or we have to grow the amount of money coming in and the economy. Those are your only two options. Those are the only two options. Now, the best option is a substantial shrinking of government. In every state of the union, government is the biggest industry because the number one expenditure of every state government is education. And that's before we even get to all the other things every other state government does. The number one line item in every state, in all 50 states, the number one line item in their budgets is education. So government is the biggest industry we have. And if it's not directly the biggest industry we have, if you count the amount of regulation it does with the two biggest private industries we have, or the biggest private industry we have, energy, it's then de facto the biggest industry we have. Coming up with a constituency of people that could afford it in the first place, and then number two, would vote for it. That you could win an election on a substantial decrease in government. As much as I love Doge, we're not going to get substantial decreases in government from Doge. Doge is a political device to condition the American people that it's okay to go ahead and cut government on any level at all, before we even start having the substantive, significant debates we're more than a generation past due to have. And then what's fair? Because the biggest expenditures we have are the entitlements. So we're going to tell people that pay decades into Social Security they're not getting their money now? Well, that's a lack of fairness on the other end. So there's not really a good solution there politically. No one's ever lost an election for spending too much money. No one ever has. At least not in my lifetime. So there's not a critical mass constituency. I wish there was, but that's not the world in which we live. There's not a critical mass constituency for a substantial reduction in government, which is the number one cause of our inflation problems, for example. So that leaves us, therefore, with the other option. We've got to increase revenue. And there's only a couple of options about increasing revenue, folks. We're going to increase it from them, or we're going to increase it from us. You're going to pay more in excise taxes and everything else. Higher income tax rates. We're going to increase revenue. We're going to be the ones that they're going to do that off of. And everyone within the sound of my voice is already working till at least June 1 to pay off the government every year as it is. Or we're going to have to get it from them. Now, the counter argument is, well, Steve, this will be a double tax because the other countries will just take the tariffs and apply it to the goods they charge us as a tax. That may happen. And if it does, Trump will be proven wrong and his presidency will be over. That's the gamble. Trump is gambling. What will happen is we'll start building and making more materials and things over here once it's not cost effective to do it over there and then import it. That's the gamble he's making. He may prove to be wrong. He may prove to be right.
Or at the very least, better trade deals.
Or better, or at the very minimum, it's some kind of cudgel to get Israel to not tariff us like what happened this week. Correct. But those are the only two options we have. Substantial reduction in government or a substantial, significant increase in the revenue. Got to shrink the pie or grow it. Those are the only options. Shrinking it is the best option. There is no political constituency for this. Doesn't exist. So grow it is. I don't know about you, but I kind of prefer other people pay. I don't think I'm paying enough. Thank you. So here we are. Those are the only two options we have. I can tell you this, it won't do anybody any good if he's wrong. Because if he's wrong, if you thought people's reliance on government was bad now, if he's wrong, Aaron, they will turn to government even more moving forward. And you will have flat out socialism if he's wrong. Flat out. Not some corporate Frankenstein chimeric version that we have now. Flat out command economy is what will happen if he's wrong. We'll come back, be rejoined by an old friend, Dr. Scott Atlas. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show. Let's not hesitate. Let's reconnect right away with an old friend of the program, Dr. Scott Atlas. It is good to see you again. Scott, how are you, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Before we get into policy and the hardcore stuff, just as a personal point of privilege, it has been almost surreal to me. I mean, this is like cosmic to watch the NIH, which tried to smear your contemporary and friend, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, and now to see him take hold of it. To see Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has, love him or hate him, has sacrificed quite a bit for these kinds of issues for a lifetime, now be given control of the Department of HHS. To see Marty Makary, who was one of the few from, mainstream academia, public medicine, people like yourself, one of the few, to defy the conventional wisdom coming out of his own, native institution, Johns Hopkins, on lockdowns, to see these people take over these departments. Before we get into the challenges ahead in the policy, Scott, just for a minute, can you reflect for us just how surreal it must be and almost providential to see this happen? I mean, this is an incredible turn of fate here.
Well, I actually, I became more pessimistic, frankly, after seeing what was happening to me and the country with the denial of fact and the complete perversion of science and health policy specifically. So yes, it's shocking. Frankly, it was shocking to me that President Trump won, because I actually underestimated the American public. I thought that everyone, or most people, believed the propaganda, the vicious media hatred, the message that was coming out of the pathway of information, which is your area, media. Mm-hmm. It's a shock. It was a shock to me personally that he won, because I thought the propaganda would prevail. Frankly, President Trump is the toughest guy I've ever known. I think we all realize that, and probably no one else would have stood up to everything that he stood up to. And so to see some of the appointments that, of people like Marty Makary and Jay Bhattacharya, who are personal friends of mine and very good, it's amazing. All
right. Now with the pleasantries dealt with up front. All right, the real hard work begins. Okay, you've been in the belly of that beast when you got brought into the coronavirus task force in the summer of 2020. All right, so you've seen the swamp, the bureaucracy, the inertia. You've seen all of that up close and personal. Because what I hear in my audience a lot is, all right, that's great, they got confirmed. Why didn't this person get fired 5 minutes ago? Why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? Why have we taken the mRNAs off the market? Things of that nature. The thing that I don't know, and maybe you can speak to, is how much can you really do and how fast, given the amount of bureaucracy it takes to do anything, right? How do you have the under department heads in place to carry out your edicts, even if you wanted to do things, if you're Marty or Bobby or Jay, right? Can you speak to some of that? How much can really be done immediately? How much of it's people are going to have to maybe be a little bit more patient, do you think, Scott?
Well, I think you bring up a lot of important points here, and I'll answer it this way. And one of my concerns is that people who are even appointed are naive about how it works. And how it works is not that you walk in there and say, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then X, Y, and Z are done. Okay, it doesn't work that way. And I'm not defending that. I'm saying that's the reality. And that's why you can't be naive. I'm saying the people who are appointed, you can't be naive. It also doesn't work that way. It's not an autocracy. Okay, it's not the other side wanted X, Y, and Z, and they just forced it through. That was wrong, but now, quote, our side wants X, Y, and Z, and we can force it through. No, I disagree with that. Okay, so there's several things here. The other part is that when you have people who want to make disruptive change. Well, we need disruption. Okay. The American people just elected the biggest disruptor in political history, Donald J. Trump. And that's great, in my opinion, because we need disruption at this point in time in history. And that said, there is a bureaucratic, entrenched class called the deep state by many people. And so it's first and foremost important to make the changes, meaning get rid of the people who are at the top, but also there's a large group of people who are there for their careers. We have a career bureaucracy that frankly runs things, whether you like it or not. That's how it works. They outlast administrations. They outlast presidents. And so, it's very important, number one, that Elon Musk and his Doge effort are functioning. This will go down, in my opinion, as the most important part of the Trump presidency. That's my opinion, including in healthcare, where they've already done things like trying to streamline tens of thousands of people that are in this massive leviathan of a bureaucracy in HHS, which includes NIH, CDC, FDA, CMS. That's all part of HHS. So that part is very good. I support that. The second thing I support is what Bobby Kennedy's, he's provoked an important new dialogue, this Make America Healthy Again, mainly focused on wholesome foods. Everybody wants good health for themselves and their kids. And also his general point about ensuring safety of all drugs and eliminating corruption in pharma and in the agricultural food industry. These things I support. But, we need to realize a few things. Number one, we need to have people who are credible and have expertise. We can't have the pendulum swing from, okay, we saw a failed expert class. We cannot have that swing to all legitimate expertise is invalid, all science is invalid, all theories on correlations equal cause are somehow sound. No. Okay, so Marty and Jay are important. Why? Because they're legitimate scientists. They're legitimate medical science experts who have the right training, the right knowledge, and the right intentions of opening free debate and having integrity and supporting legitimate science. Okay, we need people like that in place. Above them, we need people who have credibility. Okay, and I think this is, it's one thing to be disruptor, that's true. But we need to have knowledge-based disruption. And that's what Jay and Marty have. So I support the big things of Bobby Kennedy. That's true. But I think it's a little bit disturbing to think that the priorities are some of the other things, like what kind of food oil is used at McDonald's, okay, or somehow food coloring is the priority. No, it's not. Okay, it's not in the top 1,000 things. And so, we need to be focused with legitimate science. And I hope that Marty and Jay have enough backing above them and enough independence of thought to keep doing the right thing. Okay, so it's a complicated answer to your question. But, it's not true that you snap your fingers and get things done, by the way. And this is sort of part of what you're saying is that people are not patient. Okay, obviously, we have to have patience and get things done the right way. So it's a very complicated place, the government. I withdrew. Some people want to know why I'm not here. I withdrew in mid-November from being considered. I feel like my value might be better from the outside because I'm not really a fit for government. Why do I say that? Because I'm not interested in not saying the truth. I say the truth no matter what. I'm not angling for a personal job. I'm not interested in the future of what I say reflecting on a future position. And so when you're completely focused on saying the truth, no matter what, no matter who tells you what to say, okay, you're not exactly going to thrive in a government setting.
What advice would you give? Let's stick specifically to your friends because you can speak uniquely to them because you know them personally. What advice would you give to both Jay and Marty moving forward? Maybe lessons you learned, things to watch out for, etc.
Well, okay, so that's a good question. And I have spoken, to them both. A couple of things. First, the setting is a little bit different now. Okay, when I was there, it was an emergency, and everyone in the world, in the media, and most people in the country despised everyone who worked in the Trump world. Okay, even if you weren't a political appointee, which I was not. So now most of the country is pro-Trump. Okay, that's the polls. There is a different sort of more receptive world for people who are working in a Trump administration now, even though there's still a lot of hatred, no doubt. But the advice is number one to 100, do the right thing, no matter what. Okay, we can't all of a sudden change what we want because we wanted a position. We can't all of a sudden change what we stand for because we, quote, need to support the people at the top. Mm-hmm. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, again, this is not what probably you or most people expect me to say, but blind support is just as bad, just as dumb as blind opposition. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's not okay. I personally, I don't do that.
Well, you're not saying anything our audience has not heard from this microphone for many, many years. Okay, so go ahead. Yes.
Okay, good. So the point is that just because our guys won, our team won, doesn't mean you blindly support things. And I think this is numbers 1 through 100 advice I would give to anyone, including, Jay and Marty and anybody else, is that you have to do the right thing. Okay, and if you can't do the right thing, if you can't say what should be done honestly, if you can't get done what you want, you don't sacrifice important principles to keep the job. Okay, that's the point. Is that that's why I withdrew. Frankly, I mean, when you have, I'm talking about back in November, because I think it's wrong to work under people who you cannot fully support. That's what they did in Trump 1. Okay, Trump administration 1, lots of people came in. They didn't agree with President Trump. They thought they're going to do what they want. They're going to undermine him. And we saw a revolving door of chiefs of staff, of secretaries of defense, all kinds of people tried to undermine. So I don't believe in that. I believe in you say what you want, what you think are important. But if you need to sacrifice, if you're forced to sacrifice your principal things, important things, to keep a position, then you need to resign or not take the position. So, for instance, there's a lot of things that are really good. Again, I want to put this in the context of I support most of the big ideas that are being put forth. But you can't suddenly start saying that because the timing of X correlates to the second thing, Y, that means X caused Y. That's not legitimate science, okay? We see a lot of theories like that. We can't divert a lot of science research funding to things just because that's your pet area. What do I mean by that? Well, there's a lot of, I just think that, for instance, okay, to me, there's a distraction of conversation. Okay, the distraction of conversation, number one, to restore trust, and this is advice to Marty and Jay and everybody else in there. Number one, to restore trust, we can't distract from what's needed. And what is needed? What is needed is, number one, statement of fact about the pandemic management. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can't have societal closure. The pandemic management killed millions of people, destroyed millions of children, okay? In this country, human rights are violated. Where are the statements of this is the truth about the pandemic management? Lockdowns failed, lockdowns killed and destroyed people. Why aren't we getting that? We need that to restore trust. That's step number one.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be afraid to address that. We don't turn the page so that we can talk about food coloring. Okay, no, that's, to me, unacceptable. I think this has to be pushed for. The second thing to restore trust, besides those statements of fact and closure, is people need to know the truth so we can have trust in our fellow citizens. Okay, because if everybody is under the misimpression that, there's these nut jobs that think that lockdowns shouldn't have been done. No, lockdowns didn't work. That's all the data. Why isn't this said by everybody at HHS, FDA, CDC, NIH, and CMS? Today, why isn't that said? Second thing, there are conflicts of interest.
I've got about 1 minute, Scott, so go ahead. 1 minute before the break. Go ahead.
Conflicts of interest. That means the revolving door. You should be forbidden from taking a position on a board of a company in an area that you regulated for, say, 5 years. You need term limits on the new directors. All of these things we all voice support for, yet I'm wondering why nothing is being said about them. The number one problem right now is a lack of trust in science and public health by the people, and that is the number one focus, not things like these peripheral issues and certain theories that need to be pursued.
Appreciate you, Scott, as always, brother. Thank you for joining us and everything you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Aaron, we got about 30 seconds here. You have any thoughts on what we just heard from Dr. Atlas?
Well, God bless him yet again. Really appreciate his voice of just sanity, just 200 proof sanity for the last 5 years. Really, I can't imagine him and others like him where this country would be right now for just having the balls to speak out and speak the truth and do so unashamedly and repeatedly. So again, just hats off to him. And I'm still very optimistic about what's going on with HHS, really up and down the board with very few exceptions. Again, it's going to take a while. It's going to take time, but baby steps are necessary to begin with. And I think that's what you're seeing right now.
Theology Thursday coming up next. Stay tuned. And greetings, back with Hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre. Todd Herzen has the day off. Tomorrow we have a special edition of the show. We're going to go in depth with Oklahoma State Senator Dusty Deevers. And that is an interview that a group of you has been asking for the last year or so. And you're going to get your wish. That is coming up on tomorrow's show, a special edition you don't want to miss right here on the Steve Deace Show. In the meantime, let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do so by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Speaking of Facebook, I want to test something out today. All right. All of you within the sound of my voice, if you can hear me and you're on Facebook, facebook.com/Steve Deace, facebook.com/Steve Deace. If you haven't liked me before there, go there today, right now, and do so. I'm kind of curious to see how Facebook responds to that. And I may have some legal representatives that might be curious to see how Facebook responds to that too. All right, facebook.com/Steve Deace. That's facebook.com/Steve Deace. Go there right now. If you haven't yet to like us there. on our Facebook page at facebook.com/Steve Deace. Thanks in advance for doing that. Also, please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. Again, that's at Deace Show on YouTube. If you are a podcast listener, thank you so very much. You can subscribe to, or on iTunes, hit follow. That way, every time we do a new episode, it'll show up in your feed every single time. Please also leave us a 5-star review as well. And thank you to all of you that have done that. We really appreciate that. One of our episodes yesterday made it into the top 15 overall in the entire religion category on iTunes, one of its biggest categories for its podcast platform. So I was just texting with Todd and Aaron about it last night. That's pretty heady stuff, man. Kid born to a 15-year-old mom. And I mean, it's just kind of amazing what God can do, man. He can cook, okay? So let's let him. All right. So thank you guys for that. Really, really appreciate that. Very honored. Thank you. Aaron, you guys go to a small group, right? You and Bella, right?
Oh, yeah.
Does your wife use small group at times to let things out that you may, subtle ways that you may need to address?
No.
No, mine just did that to me last night. So we've been married, it'll be 28 years on Saturday. 28 years on Saturday. And not once has Amy ever complained about my snoring before. In fact, I'm not even aware that I ever did for 28 years. Somehow we get on the topic of sleeping habits at small group last night. Before we dig into our Bible study. And Amy motions to me. She's like, this one over here, I don't know what's going on recently, man, but he has been snoring like a champ.
Wow.
And he thinks that he wakes up on laying on one side facing the wall, and he just turned over and did that on his own. I actually did that. I rolled him over so I could get some sleep. And she's like, has something changed? You haven't done this for 28 years. What has changed in the last couple of weeks that have been you've been snoring so badly? I've been like, what is going on? And I thought to myself, what has changed? The only thing I could think of was this. I have started mixing into my regular routine the dream powder from Beam. And maybe I am reaching a deeper level of sleep than I ever did before. So this is the side effect, I guess. All right. So it's working. And you can, maybe you can annoy your wife as well with deeper sleeps. So you feel great. Okay. But
I had no idea where that was going until the very end there.
Yeah, you can see. Yeah. I can't think of anything else that's changed. I'm as healthy as I've ever been as an adult right now. I can't think of anything else that has changed. I feel great in the morning. I've got even more energy when I wake up. The only thing that's changed is I'm mixing in the dream powder from Beam. All right. So if you also want to get a better night's sleep, you can get 40% off your first order with the code Steve. 40% off your first order with the code Steve right now. It's a hot cocoa with various flavors. I do the chocolate peanut butter. Yes, I know what you're thinking. That's the last thing I need is all those carbs and sugars right before I go nights, right? Especially if you're an intermittent faster. I'm one of those too. You won't get any of those with Beam. All right, they'll make sure you don't get that. What you will get is a really good night's sleep with their powerful blend of all natural ingredients. All right. So again, use the code Steve at checkout to get 40% off. That's 40% off for a limited time right now. Code Steve at Beam, like beam in your eye, BEAM, beam.com/Steve. That's beam.com/Steve. Pardon me. Use the code Steve for the big discount. All right, we're going to do something different for Theology Thursday today. And I got a text a couple days ago. Now, I take it back. Just yesterday, I got a text from our colleague Jason Whitlock just yesterday saying, hey, have you seen this new show on Netflix? And I'm like, I've seen it in my menu, but I don't know, it doesn't look interesting to me. I haven't watched it, so no. He's like, you have to watch this. And there's a part of it that makes me think they just ripped off your movie watching is what he texts me, right? And so I'm like, that's interesting. Okay. A few hours later, I get a text from you, Aaron, saying, hey, you still up? It was like 10 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, sure. You call me up. and you want to alert me to the exact same thing that Jason Whitlock was pinging me about, right?
Right.
And that's when I start to think, okay, Providence definitely wants us to highlight this. This is twice in one day, the exact same thing, bringing it to my attention so that we can address it. All right. Now, what is this thing? Aaron, you have prepared a kind of a 5-minute introduction to what is becoming one of the biggest programs to air so far in 25 on Netflix, right?
Yep.
All right. Watch this.
Adolescence. If you haven't heard of the hit new British Netflix show Adolescence, you're quickly becoming one of the few. After debuting on the streaming platform a few weeks ago, it quickly skyrocketed to becoming one of the top 10 most popular original shows ever on Netflix. What caught my eye this week was after UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he watched the show with his teenage son and daughter and said the show hit home hard. And the Prime Minister basically wants it as de facto required viewing in British classrooms. So, what is this show that's drawn millions of eyeballs in a few short weeks, has catapulted into the stratosphere of one of Netflix's most successful productions, which is quite the feat, and has the British Prime Minister shaken like he's a James Bond cocktail? You might be tempted to think, with a company like Netflix and a name like Adolescence, it's going to be a coming-of-age story about a quirky, illegal alien child from Haiti who settles in small-town America, finally picks one of the 732 genders, and shows the racist, xenophobic, rainbow-phobic natives where to stick it. And that's why, of course, open borders are beautiful and so is troonerism, except it's not that. It's actually worse. Adolescence is the totally fictional story, the showrunners really want you to know that, about a black teenage boy in Britain named Hassan with a history of unprovoked violence who brutally murders a girl for no reason. Wrong. Adolescence is the totally fictional story, the showrunners want you to know that, about a white 13-year-old boy in Britain named Jamie who's radicalized online by right-wingers and murders a girl at school for bullying him. Wrong again? Nope, that's what this show is about. Yes, the show everybody's watching and talking about is about a 13-year-old white boy who listens to right-wingers online and proceeds to go out and murder an innocent girl. Already, we're off to a bad start. The premise isn't even believable. I'm pretty sure the UK banned murder like a few years ago. Anyway, what does this monstrous killer look like? This. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the titular monster murderer of the Netflix show Adolescence. You're looking at the face of evil incarnate right there, and definitely not the face of a young man who's working hard down at Tesco. Seriously, though, they couldn't have found a more menacing-looking teenager for the lead role? Well, you'll find out. I think that would have defeated the whole point of the show. There are 4 episodes, each around an hour long, each shot in one continuous take. That's pretty impressive. This unique production technique, coupled with the grisly, gut-wrenching, meticulously detailed story, creates a hypnotizing effect for viewers. In other words, it's pretty much perfect for the hordes of its smooth-brained fans who are now even more convinced, thank you very much, that white men, in this case white boys, are the devil. Now is typically the time on a review like this I'd say spoiler alert, but let me tell you, you can't spoil anything cooked up in Lucifer's kitchen. The first episode details every single moment from the point where Jamie and his family had their door kicked down by the police, he's arrested for murder, booked at the jail, meeting with attorneys, yada yada, all the way to the moment where the police reveal CCTV footage to Jamie, showing him stabbing his classmate Katie to death in a parking lot. The police have Jamie dead to rights. Episode 2, the lead investigator on the case goes to Jamie's school, still searching for the murder weapon, and learns that Jamie was bullied online by Katie, who called him an incel. The term manosphere is introduced, and the real villains, online influencers of young men, are revealed. The investigator finds out one of Jamie's friends supplied the knife for Jamie, and that friend gets arrested. Episode 3 takes place months after the murder and goes more inside the mind of the white boy. The episode takes place at a detention facility for the white boy, where a white female girl boss psychologist interviews the white boy, who reveals himself to be highly intelligent, quick-tempered, cunning, bipolar, engaging, frustrated, funny, and quite literally the devil with a low view of women. The mind of the white boy truly is a tempest of chaos. The psychologist asks the white boy many questions and reveals the show's definition of masculinity. Masculinity is people who can fix things, who like sports, and might have a temper. The white boy reveals he had previously asked Katie out, was rebuffed. Katie started bullying him, and bada bing, bada boom. That was the impetus for the showing of his true white boy self, a cold-blooded, woman-hating murderer. Andrew Tate is mentioned by name in this episode for being responsible for the white boy's radicalization. What's not mentioned is that Andrew Tate is, as you know, Muslim. Minor detail I'm sure this detail-obsessed show managed to overlook by accident. The episode concludes with the female psychologist in tears after witnessing and going inside the mind of the white boy. In episode 4, the white boy from a detention facility announces to his father on his father's birthday that he plans to plead guilty on murder. It's in this episode. The show makes a valiant effort to underscore the role a father has in shaping the next generation of men. It even reveals the white boy's father was a complete and total wuss on multiple occasions. He didn't spank him, wouldn't stand up for him when other fathers were laughing at him during Little League soccer matches and so on. Oh, and the white boy's parents had no interest in policing his online activity because being terminally online is just what all kids are like these days. Of course, going in with the definition of masculinity that it's just basically people who fix things and like sports, there's no real positive role model that the show points to for what a man actually should be. So, a wuss father, but yes, it's online influencers who are creating a crisis in the West. Now, if it sounds like I'm absolving this fictional character, Jamie, of his guilt for murder, that's not my intent at all. But it's not really the show's intent to do the opposite either. The show's intent is to transfer the fictional character's guilt for being a psychopath onto every single non-fictional white man in Western civilization. That's why the casting of baby-faced Owen Cooper as the murderous Jamie is so pernicious. The intent is that every parent of white males look at their cute kids and think, hey, they could all be murderers too. In other words, it's 200 proof straight toxic masculinity guilt, whatever that is, with a chaser of racial consciousness. To the show and its hordes of fans, Jamie is me, Jamie is my son Ben, Jamie is every other white male on the face of the planet. The show wants you to know we're all just women-hating murderers beneath the surface, ticking time bombs of pent-up rage who should be hating ourselves if we don't already. But seriously though, I was planning on teaching my son to murder anybody who bullies him, but after watching this show, I'm having second thoughts. But thankfully this story is just fiction, as the showrunners have insisted repeatedly. Wrong? How do I know? The showrunners told us, this seemingly satirical version of the show that I presented earlier, that Adolescence is about a black teenage boy in Britain named Hassan with a history of unprovoked violence who brutally murders a girl for no reason. Well, that storyline is actually real, and it actually served in part as the inspiration for the story we just spent the last several minutes discussing. Adolescence showrunner Stephen Graham actually admitted before he didn't the so-called knife violence epidemic in Britain was the original idea for the show, specifically the murder of a real British girl named Eliane Andam, who was stabbed to death by another teenager named Hassan Sentamu back in 2023. So the murder of Eliane Andam by Hassan Sentamu, the latter of whom was known to police to be prone to unprovoked violence, was part of the inspiration of the show, which paints white males as the devil. That checks out. Adolescence is one of the most malevolent, ham-fisted, but hypnotic shows I've ever witnessed.
I want to let that percolate for a minute. I want you guys to absorb what Aaron just laid out for you. First, we'll talk about our friends over at Deace Medical. If there was any silver linings to the scamdemic at all, it was a chance to meet some new friends. We just had one of them on last hour, Dr. Scott Atlas. Deace Medical is another one. They came to us as a partner to say, hey, what just happened with ivermectin, a drug we just gave a Nobel Prize to a few years ago, and now, rather than testing it, seeing if it might save lives, just immediately desecrating it. If we're going to do that now, what's to stop them from doing this with any venerable medication in the future? And I agreed. And so our partnership was born. And if you get the Deace case, you can get a collection of some of the most proven and noteworthy life-saving antibiotics in all of human history, amoxicillin, doxycycline, and more. But now, over the last year or so, Deace has allowed you to customize your case too. You can expand it if you want to do that. You can include the aforementioned ivermectin if you want that. So if you're looking for outlets, where can I get some? This would be one of them. You can also expand it to lots of the different medications that you want. Practical things too. EpiPens coming up. You know, we're getting into bee season for yours truly. So it's almost EpiPen season for me. All right. You can get a discount with the code DACE when you go and when you check out at Deace.com. JASE at Deace.com. Code DACE at Deace.com. Code DACE at Deace.com for the discount with our friends over at Deace Medical. The best thing, Aaron, I can say, the best thing I can say, and the analog that you offered at the end. What was the name of the young man again that inspired the murder?
In part, Hassan.
Hassan, yeah. And so therefore that is projected upon some dough-faced, baby-faced white adolescent.
Yeah, I hate the racialist stuff, but I just
there's no way around it in this case.
I can't just.
This is why you
this.
hate it, because of this. This is why this was done. Okay. The amount of the conflicting idolatries here. So they want to indict men as a whole.
Correct.
And so they can't do that if they actually do a one-to-one translation. It violates their own orthodoxy,
Correct.
their own idolatry. Right? They get called racist by the very people that they're trying to influence and brainwash, right? Okay. Think the cultural Marxist Prime Minister of UK is sitting down with his teenage son to watch this show if it's about a young black man who does this to a white girl?
Nope. Young white man, though. It's required viewing
Correct.
in UK schools.
Correct. And so this gets in the way of one of their own idolatrous orthodoxies if they actually base it on or totally base it on the story that inspired it. It runs afoul of their own idolatry. So instead, they've got to violate the commandment of bearing false witness. See, folks, there's no such thing as a non-theological issue. There's not. Someone will always rule and something will always be worshipped every time. So we're going to violate the commandment of bearing false witness and impugning white males uniquely, because to use the story as that was the actual inspiration for said impugning of all of masculinity would therefore then require us to be labeled as racists. Because some groups, these people believe you're allowed to tell the truth about, and others you're not. And of course, if they had done that, there's no way they'd be getting celebrated by the people that they're celebrating, and it probably doesn't even get made and distributed by Netflix in the first place. So here we are. So yes, we hate the racialist stuff, but this is a byproduct of that, of exactly why. The best that I think you could say, let's start here as believers, Aaron, okay? Let mercy triumphs over judgment, so let's start here. Let's start with trying to be somewhat, shall we say, empathetic. The best you can say about this is that it is addressing a legitimate concern that you and I frankly have.
Yes.
About who is discipling this
Correct.
Generation of young men.
It's mixing truth with lies.
Correct. The best you can say is it has stumbled upon a legitimate concern our worldview has, but it lacks the worldview to adequately address it, and so therefore is entangled in its own idolatries that contradict its own message.
That is precisely the best you can say.
That's the best you can say. The best you can say is this is just a giant, a well-intentioned rake step. That's the best that you can say. Because we could deconstruct this in about 3 seconds, starting with what we just even pointed out. This is based on a story that undermines the premise of the entire show. The story that the show is based on undermines its premise. And that third episode there, where they sit together in the room across the table, that's what Jason said, essentially, thought just ripped off my movie.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is the best we can say, and we'll get into the worst things we can say here, don't worry about that. But if that is the best we can say, then can't we also say, here on a Theology Thursday, that this reinforces our lament about how the church has largely left young men behind in the last generation?
Correct.
Men in general, but specifically the young men, because they're getting the double whammy. Too many of them either don't have a dad or a dad who's a beta, so they're not getting the proper discipleship at home either, let alone from the church. They don't know how to deal with anger and frustration. So it's a consistent state of passive aggressive. We don't allow we refer to it as the dude code on our show, but they don't even allow anymore the natural outlets for such things. You know, I've told this story before about a time I got bullied in high school as a new student. And we moved back to Iowa my junior year. I started getting bullied by this kid, and I'm new, and it's a huge school. And it's way different than the school I used to go to. And so I'm kind of concerned, you know, if I stand up for myself day one, am I going to get jumped by 5 guys? I kind of don't know the lay of the land. So until I, you know, give it a couple of weeks and figure it out, you know, I do my best to avoid him. But we do have gym class together. And one day, a few weeks into this, we're playing basketball. And in front of the entire gym class, I steal the ball from him and go up for a layup. He runs down the court as fast as he can. And as I go up for the layup, he undercuts me. So I land on the ground, back and head first. And the loud thud stopped the entire rest of the gym class to turn around and hear what that noise was, including the gym teacher. Now, the gym teacher was an assistant football coach for the high school. And I recognize that this is the moment now I'm going to have to do something about this, or it's just going to escalate and get worse. So I get up, I grab the basketball, and I stand about 5 feet from him, and he's sitting there taunting me. I launched it at his face as hard as I could possibly throw the ball, and I just jumped him right there in front of everybody. And just started wailing like, you know, that infamous Ralphie scene in Christmas Story. Right. Okay. Sooner or later, I must have gotten lucky and connected on one of these shots on the side of the nose, and the other guy's nose has a little bit of blood, and that's when the teacher steps in. He was watching it the whole time. He knew what was going on. He was aware I was getting bullied. He understood what needed to happen. He knew it would get worse if he stepped in and stopped it. He would only get worse. So he knew I was going to have to do it. We used to know these kinds of things. We used to understand these kinds of things. And then when it was clear now that I had some kind of advantage over the other young man, he stepped in, pulled me off of him. We got sent to the principal's office. There wasn't some zero tolerance policy. Okay. Principal looked at us and said, "Hey, you satisfied with how this has turned out?" I said, "I'm satisfied." The other kid said, "Yeah, I'm good." And we got along great rest of the year. No issues. That's how we used to handle these things. And out of that, we came the young men that built the most dominant fighting force in the history of humanity, the greatest manufacturing base, the greatest entrepreneurial inventor base in the history of humanity, on and on and on and on it goes. Almost all of them, by the way, Aaron, being what? Men. That we used to understand this. We used to understand. And Aaron will see this. He's probably already seeing this as Ben is already getting older. It doesn't take long. And you especially see it when you have a daughter and you realize how different the boys and the girls are right away. And you realize right away, that little boy is cute and adorable. We showed that great little video at the end, right, of your montage today, where mom and dad are kissing that adorable little baby boy, okay? It won't be much older than that, though, that baby boy is going to start sizing up the old man before he even realizes he's doing it. I think I can take him. I think I can get away with that. I think I got mom wrapped around her finger. She'll give me what I want. It's those instincts, by the way, that if properly channeled when he's older, will make him a man worthy of providing for and protecting and defending one of your daughters, should he be fortunate enough to marry her. And being the kind of father that your grandkids feel secure with and know if something goes bump in the night that he will jump to their aid, or if they're caught in a situation where they shouldn't be maybe, but now they don't know how to get out, they can make a call and he's there like that. Those are the same instincts that will make him the kind of father for your grandbabies and husband for your daughters that you want your daughter and grandchildren to have. But they need to be properly channeled. And if they're not, those instincts will not go away. We've tried Ritalin. We've tried sedentary lifestyle. We've tried zero tolerance policies. We've tried it all. We've tried everything we could to make those instincts go away. We can't. They were put there for a reason. Because you kind of need to have a little bit of a screw loose to say, you know what? I think I'm willing to go walk a minefield in Iraq. You kind of have to have something's a little bit on edge for you to be the guy that says, you know what? I don't think you get to talk to my wife like that. Would you like to step outside? It takes something that in the wrong context would put the people you care about on edge. In the right context is what will make the people you care about feel safe and secure. And we used to understand this. And I felt this tension raising Noah his whole life. Aaron, you will feel this raising Ben. On some level, the stuff that's going to make him want to challenge me, I don't want to put it down when I really can, when I'm older, bigger than him, and I can dominate him, because then I'll emasculate him. I don't want to do that. I just don't want him disrespecting me in my own home at the same time, because then I'm raising the exact kind of young man that we write, shows like this about, right? That's the tension here. That is the tension that exists, and it's supposed to exist. And this is why we need good dads to help us exercise and navigate this tension. And this is why dads need connected to their Heavenly Father, who experiences the exact same tension with them right out of the womb. Look at this beautiful creation of mine. I've counted all the hairs on his head. And yet, in the not too distant future, he's going to look at me and say, I think I could be like God. I'll call my own shot, make my own decisions. Thanks, though. I'll take it from your pops. We used to societally understand these things. These things used to get preached and taught from our pulpits by men worthy of such teachings and preachings. Not the kinds of men now that your boys look at, your teenage boys look at and think, I think I could beat that guy up. He's got, he has I can't imagine the last time, frankly, he had a conjugal relationship with his own wife, let alone understands the amount of testosterone I have raging through my body right now, the amount of production that is happening within my genitals right this minute, and that desire to release that and let it go. I can't imagine that guy up there with his sweater vest in July. And his khakis all year round, and his Hawaiian shirt in January. I cannot imagine how that guy ever got his wife pregnant, let alone understands the tension and the pressure I'm feeling right now to let that tension go. Does any of this sound familiar to you, Aaron? You've been a young man recently. Yep. And without proper discipleship, first from the church, then from a dad, for every success story of a great mom who will be able to navigate this on her own, there's going to be 50 failures. And these will be failures that will have generational consequences. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Noah was sitting here right now, okay, he's graduating in almost a month. He just turned 18 a month ago. Or 2 months ago. If he was sitting here right now, if you asked him, hey, did your dad navigate that tension perfectly? He'd tell you, no, he didn't. He made mistakes. But he'd at least be thankful I tried. I at least tried. We're not even trying. More in a moment. So we're trying to do this thing in America again. We used to have it. It was a pretty lucrative enterprise. What was it called? Real estate market. Used to have one of these things, right? Used to, particularly if you lived in a nice suburb like me, signs up in the neighborhood all the time, and they didn't last long because people couldn't wait to move in. Now you see a for sale sign in someone's yard in your neighborhood in the last few years, and you're like, what are those? Right? So in these unprecedented times, Todd is not here to say. So thank you, Aaron. If you are going to be one of those brave souls now that Trump is here trying to fix things, you're going to try and bring the real estate market back. Heck, maybe even make real estate great again. Make sure you've got an agent you can trust. You'll find them where the website says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. There will connect you with an agent whose track record of success we verified first. A lot of times there will be agents, by the way, that are Blaze fans like you, so you've got values in common too. And whether you're trying to get across the country, across town, wherever you need to go, ultimately where you need to go is across the finish line with a deal satisfactory to you. And they're going to make that happen for you, courtesy of an agent you can trust at realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, just to reiterate here, it is not easy raising a boy to a man. In fact, it's probably the hardest it's ever been for two reasons. Number one, the amount of temptation that exists on one of these things at your fingertips instantaneously. Number two, the amount of us who actually had good male role models in our own home growing up that set the example for us that we could then follow when it was our turn. I certainly did not have that. You know? And again, it's not easy. I don't want to make it look like I'm some superhero dad. After Noah turned 18, we kind of did an exit interview. Hey, how did I do? He said a couple things that, I got to be honest, stung, but I needed to hear them. But here's the thing, too. The fact that we have the kind of relationship where he thought it was safe for him to say what he really thought, but he also communicated in a way to me that it was respectful. Like, I didn't feel like he was like defying me or passing on any, transferring any of his own accountability. I asked an honest question. He gave me some honest answers. So I'm not saying it's easy, man. It's not. But it is necessary. And a lot of times for us as dads, it's the attempt that matters. It's really more of a pass-fail than a grade. What does Paul say to his spiritual son? I finished the race. This is where we as dads have to finish the race here. And we don't have a lot of examples to point to that when we grew up. So you went 0 for 4 today. Cool. First pitch is tomorrow at 1:05. See you in the batter's box. Show up tomorrow. Don't quit. Keep showing up. Finish the race. And my hope, in fact, my expectation is Noah will be better at this than me. And that through me, we corrected generations of male dysfunction. And so at least restored it to a baseline of competence. And Noah can take it from here and do better. In fact, I fully expect and hope that he will. Do not be offended if your children want to be better than you. Be thankful. But here's the thing. If we don't tackle these dilemmas amongst ourselves within a biblical worldview, the culture will do it for us, which brings me to the question I wanted to ask you. What is it they want from men instead? See, they're really good at, and this is a common tactic by the enemy. Well, I don't like your definition of law. Okay, cool. Well, what's yours? Where do you get your? You don't want your laws to come from the 10 Commandments? Great. Where do you want your laws to come from then? See, notice they rarely give us an opportunity to point out what it is they really want. They're really good at picking and finding soft spots in what we think. But they're not overly eager to tell you exactly what their replacement model for what we've been advocating in the West for. You notice that? All right. So what is it they want instead? If they understand something is wrong, but I'm sure they would everybody involved in this production would bristle at returning to the kinds of notions that I just articulated, then what do they want in place of where we currently are?
The final scene is absolutely and totally gut-wrenching and gripping, where the father returns to his son's room after 13 months after his son murders a classmate. And he just sobs and weeps, lays down on his son's bed, kisses his son's teddy bear from when he was a kid, tucks the teddy bear in, and said, "I'm sorry, son, I should have done better." The show's definition of masculinity, though, is somebody who likes to fix things and watch sports. There is no alternative. It's just an ethereal, hey, do better, dads, but do better how? Do better what? Do better why?
What would be our source material for what's better?
Correct.
Where would we go to even know what better is?
The show doesn't answer that. It doesn't have a solution. All it has is just the problem and browbeating. That's it. There is no
sort
solution.
of like the enemy just asked, did God really say?
Correct.
It didn't present like an alternative vision for humanity. Just is that, you sure that's what God said? Just kind of picked at what God established and then failed to tell you right up front what he thought we should do and become instead?
Correct.
Yeah. I think because you and I would agree, Dad should have done better.
Correct.
How would we know what better is? Where would our definition of what better is, where would it come from? In fact, without answering those two questions, where do we even have the moral standing to say that Dad should have done better at all?
Correct.
He's just a randomly evolved being. He acted on utilitarian interests. Somebody offered him something that he did, or he offered something to somebody they didn't want to give him. He was bigger, stronger, had a weapon, acted entirely on natural law and instinct. Survival of the fittest. I've got more muscle in my body at 13 than this 13-year-old girl does, plus I have a weapon. By what standard would we say what he did was wrong? By what standard? The very one that they took out of all the schools, institutions, the culture, out of everywhere. By that very standard. And so we're back to where we started this conversation, which is they had to take a story about a black kid named Hassan stabbing a white girl and make it about an indictment of all the white kids because they couldn't even violate their own idolatries to get to the solution. There's a lot of concern right now on our side. Some of it I think is overblown. Some of it I think is legit. And some of it, Aaron, I'm frankly going to wait and see for myself to see where it goes. But there is a growing concern on our side about essentially taking white grievance politics and turning it into a theology.
Yep.
You see these fights happening online all the time, right? Okay. Well,
This, by the way, parenthetical information. This is what I was really nervous about doing this intro and the way that I did it, is that I didn't want to play into that at all. But unfortunately, Netflix made it so obvious what they were doing, I could not just ignore it.
See, I'm glad that you didn't ignore it, because here's the thing. If we ignore this, let's say the emergence of white grievance politics, white supremacy as theology, let's say it's every bit as big of a concern as some people think on our side that it is. Again, I don't care what the other side thinks. I don't care at all. And here's a life hack for all of you. Care not at all with people who hate you, will never support you, never agree with you, never root for you. Look at the difference in the Trump presidency caring about trying to win over Maggie Haberman in the first term compared to the second. Dude, that is such a basic reason for why things are different. There's others. But have you noticed the difference in Trump is no longer chasing after winning the approval of people that were never going to win it, never going to give it to him? He's finally accepted he's not a popular New York socialite anymore. And maybe it did sadly take a bullet across his ear. Oh, wait, you're right. These guys just hate me and nothing's ever going to stop it. Okay, then. And then look at the difference in leadership since he finally accepted that. Men and women both, we spend way too much time trying to care. Well, I want fans of my rival team to recognize how great my team is. They won't ever. So give it up. Stop caring with people who will never like you, never root for you, never cheer for you, never support you, and never agree with you, think about you, period. Stop caring. That's life hack number 1. And 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I'm talking about the concern that exists about this phenomenon on my own side. I care what my side thinks. If it's every bit as bad and prevalent as some of my friends think that it is, let me tell you exactly how to make it even worse than it currently is. Not to address it the way, Aaron, that you just did. It is every bit as wrong to have, quote unquote, pride in being white as it is to have an assumption of guilt for the same thing. It's wrong on both ends. God is not a respecter of persons. Race, as we understand it, is not a biblical construct. People are divided into Jew and Gentile, male and female, sinner and saint in the biblical worldview. That is it.
And you're talking about proud of being white as opposed to, well, I'm glad I'm not black. I'm not glad I'm not brown. You're proud of the way God made you.
Correct.
Just want to make sure
Yeah, like there's an inherent superiority
Correct.
that God made me some way that he didn't make somebody else.
Correct.
Exactly. Yes. That's wrong. Every bit as much as it's wrong to think that you have an inherent inferiority because of the way God made you as well. Not true. So if we don't confront this kind of racialist crap, whatever you think the current problem that is burgeoning on the right, the current status of it is of, ethno-pagan, white grievance politics, Aryan supremacy masquerading as theology, whatever you currently think the problem with that on our side right now is, I can promise you, not addressing the racialist crap in shows like this will make it 10 times worse. You're doing their branding for them. Whatever you think the current anti-Semitism problem is, and I've gone a few rounds with some things I thought were some anti-Semitic tropes, have I not?
Yes.
But you know what? That's another reason, by the way, why I am concerned when I find out things like Israel, that would not exist without us, has been giving us tariffs. You want to make a great case for anti-Semitic tropes, Aaron? That's a hella case right there. So wait a minute. We've got to fund the entire Israeli Defense Force, but then they get to tariff us too? Dude, I just wrote Candace Owens' script for her show today. You're welcome, Candace. You don't even have to go and show up to work. The Jews are giving us tariffs. That kind of ridiculousness feeds ridiculousness. And I got that from, all you're going to do, Steve, is just help these anti-Semites. No, I'm not. And if I am, that's a you problem. If I can't say what is right or wrong, one way or the other, then it doesn't matter which way it's right or wrong. Either way, we're screwed here. It is wrong to take a case where a black kid stabs a white girl.
No, it's a black girl.
A black girl, I'm sorry, and translate it as a broad-based guilt assumption on white kids. It's wrong. It's wrong both ways. To borrow a phrase from Clarence Thomas, it's a high-tech lynching. That's what Netflix did. And if we don't call this out, whatever you think the current problem is with some of the rougher edges of our side gaining a foothold and becoming more mainstream, you'll just make their case for them. The opposite to a lie is the truth. The opposite to injustice is justice. And see, here's their problem on their side. They either can't tell us what they want instead, and even more likely, they really don't know. And this is what happens when you've been given over to your own depraved mind. You don't know. You're just doing what God says not to be done. You've been handed over. You don't know. And so you end up with, even in the best case scenario, maybe the right complaints. But then the solutions that you offer will actually lead to more of your same complaints. And this happens comprehensively. Government is corrupt, but we need more government. Corporations are bad. Unless it's a big pharma corporation that wants to use me as its vassal of experimentation for its quote-unquote vaccines. What the culture needs more than anything else right now, Aaron, is truth. I'll give you the last word. We got 2 minutes left.
I just want to reset why this stuck in my craw and why when I watched this show, I thought this needs a swift and brutal takedown. Is because of everything that you talked about. But also, Netflix produces a lot of original content. There's new stuff out there every single month. How much of this content, though, vaults into the top 10 all-time most successful shows on Netflix within a couple of weeks? The list might be one, or maybe one or two. I think there's something uniquely hypnotic. I use that term on purpose about this show, maybe particularly because of how it was produced and how well done it was. That is definitely taking a foothold, because all of the themes that we just talked about here are not new. Now, the way that it was packaged in this show, I think I happen to believe is uniquely pernicious and malevolent. But there's also something unique about how quickly this is gaining a foothold. The show is becoming an institution in and of itself, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I'll be proven to be wrong about that here in a few weeks. But there's just something about this that I think needed a swift and brutal rebuttal and takedown. And that's why this stuck in my craw the last few days.
Did we have the conversation about this you wanted us to have?
Absolutely.
Given your concern level.
Absolutely. Yes. Because if you look at in the church in particularly, it's just kind of a series of chaotic pendulums swinging from one side to another. The narrow road is narrow for a reason. If there are not voices to point to the narrow road, you're going to end up in one ditch or another. You're going to end up in the Andrew Tate version of masculinity, or you're going to end up in complete and total girl boss feminism. You're going to end up in racialism for one skin color, one pigmentation, or racialism in the other direction. Both are ditches. What do I always say? Don't end up in a ditch, whether that's in your thinking or in real life. If you're in a ditch in real life, it's because you're either doing community service, you did something wrong, you're in a wreck, that's bad. If you end up in a ditch in your thinking, that's equally as bad. So, unless there are voices to point to the narrow road, you're going to end up in a ditch one way or another.
That'll do it for today's show. Back at it again tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, Romans 8:28.